All right. Welcome to Resilient Voices and Beyond. I am so excited for today's episode. I have a very special guest with me today. Wow, like I met her. We were just talking about I met her about 4 or 5 years ago. And I don't know if you guys ever get that feeling when you meet somebody, you know they're meant for greatness and so forth. I met her, I heard a little bit of her story and so forth at the NFYI Shadow Day experience. And I just was like, wow, that is a great person. And I know this person is going to be doing great things. And I've been following her for the stint of that experience, but also after so far. And, got a chance to read her book and everything. But I'm not going to kind of rant on about, all the different things. I'm going to have her introduce herself.
Thank you, Michael. You're so kind. So my name is Christina Meredith, and I grew up in foster care in Florida, here in Northeast Florida, St. Augustine and Jacksonville. And that's when I decided I wanted to fight for other children so they didn't have to go through the things that I went through, because the system can be, as you know, really horrendous for outcomes for our kids, especially the aged out foster youth, because most of the older adults like myself in care, they get forgotten. So that's really been my ministry, my war front. And then started a nonprofit, Christina Meredith Foundation. We do a lot of work at the federal and state level to support policy and advocacy, from mental health to foster care to child trafficking, to ending homelessness. And I did win Miss California on a whim in 2013 somehow. I'm not sure how that happened. I ended up writing my first memoir in 2019, went on a national book tour. I'm working on my second book now, which will be out next year, called Assuming Risk. And then my first book, Cinder Girl, is being developed into a major motion picture. So, that's really exciting. So we got a lot of things going on the last few years. And I also serve in the United States Army. I'm a officer, an intelligence officer, serving here in the Florida Guard. And I've been serving for a little over 7 years now. So yeah, there's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Awesome. Wow. So, it's just an honor to be able to speak with you today and be able to record this podcast in hopes that, you can enrich the audience and listeners, and some wisdom and knowledge from your experience and expertise, and hopes that, it can spread a little bit more knowledge on, child welfare and who you are as an individual. You stated a lot of things in the introduction. You're part of the U.S. Army National Guard. You're an author. Getting ready to be a two-time author. Also getting ready to have a movie, and you worked on policy. You're a foster care alumni, but I like to kind of switch that. You are a foster care survivor and warrior, and enrich that with power within that name, because you've done so much and advocating and giving not just of your own experience but of yourself, for this nation and so forth. So thank you for that. With all that being said, I like to go backwards, because a lot of times when we do speaking events and so forth, we talk about what's going on now, and we don't really know that everybody knows us and so forth. You're pretty out there, so I'm pretty sure everyone knows you. But I want to kind of take us back and take the listeners back to kind of get a sense of how you became the Christina of today. So if you can take me back to your experience and whatever you're comfortable with, I would love to hear.
Yeah, that's a really great question, Michael. I think for me, I was 10 years old, in between houses, because my biological mother kept tossing us back and forth, my sisters and brothers and I. There was 10 of us. And I was 10 years old, and I remember she had abused me and beaten me and done horrible things to me separate from my siblings for years. But I remember specifically at 10, after a beating, and I looked up for her from the ground in the kitchen, and she had just beat me in front of my siblings, and made me stand still and wouldn't let me, I had to stand still and I wasn't allowed to flinch or move my hands. And if you, and you probably experienced this when you're abused for a long time, you instantly flinch because you know that blow's coming. And so you just naturally, twitch or move or try to get away. And so for years and years, up until into my late 20s, I was still, if someone quickly walked by or if someone, got too close or something happened too quickly, I would flinch the same way I would as a little girl. And so 10 years old on the kitchen floor, and I was crying because I just got beat. And I remember looking at my mother, and I remember for the first time realizing that she had a deep disdain for me. Like she did not care for me at all. I could see it in her eyes. And I remember thinking to myself, I will never become you. I remember looking up at her and thinking at 10 years old, I will never become you. And so at that point, I just refused to be mean, angry, bitter. I just did not want to be my mother. And so I think that's really how it all started, who I am today. That pivotal moment at 10 years old on the kitchen floor, I just was just so determined to never be her.
Wow. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I have a question about that experience. You said you had a moment that kind of brought a sense of like knowing, if I can say, this is not what I want my story to be, and I'm not, if I have anything, to say to it, it's not going to be. So kind of asking back with that, was abuse or, foster care experience, was that generational, in your family?
So my mother was never in foster care, but she was in different homes because her mother dropped her off at different homes. So, and that's, I feel like most children in care end up with that story first, where their biological mother or father end up like taking them from home to home and dropping them off when they don't want to deal with them. And so that was part of her story. So she was never in care, but she did get displaced, because her mother would just leave her places and then pick her up. And then on my biological father's side, he was separated. He had 12 brothers and sisters, and they were all strewn apart, but in their family members, because they were Italian. So his grandmother really raised him, and his aunts and his uncles. So I do feel like in a sense it's generational, because there, on either side, there wasn't the mother and father structure God intended it, right? And so I think it just kind of, in our family with us kids, just fell to pieces because you couldn't hold it together, so the state had to get involved. Thank God. They were late. The state should have gotten involved way earlier than they did, but thank God they did. They certainly saved my life. But I'd say it's generational in a sense.
Definitely. Thank you. I asked that question because when, I think about all the other, people I've spoken to and alumni, it tend to be things or patterns that had happened. And just like you said, I probably should have been removed or placed earlier. That's exactly what my story was. I was experiencing abuse for years, and it wasn't until I started acting out and police got involved, I went into the juvenile system, then court and the child welfare system started to pay attention. But by that time, I had numbed out from my abuse, so I definitely get, and I respect and understand the what you just said, that, it kind of like saved my life, and I say that all the time. Foster care saved my life. It probably wasn't like the suites, it wasn't like the Marriott or anything, but it provided a lot of great opportunities, and so forth. I guess, kind of fast forwarding a little bit. What was your experience in care? Were you in foster homes, group homes, or, what did that look like?
So for a long time, it was my mother would drop us off at homes, and then that family would realize that my mother was a fraud and she wasn't sending money or doing anything, and she would just drop us off and leave. And they would always bring us back. And so that was my first experience. And then at 15, The police had always been around. The police started coming around when I was 9,
Mhm.
and they would come and they do wellness checks. We had wellness checks for years that didn't amount to hill of beans, which is another reason why I wore so hard for policy, because it's so important that we get it right for our kids the first time. Because I could have been spared years of rape and abuse if at 9 years old, when that police officer first came to check on, you know what I'm saying? So I experienced the wellness checks and the police and all the craziness for years, but it wasn't until I was 16 that I was physically removed from my home and put into what they called a long-term non-relative placement. Um,
Okay.
and I was there until my senior year, my first semester of my senior year. I turned 18, and then I left that home with what I came with, my black trash bags, and
Mm.
couch surfed all of my senior year and graduated high school. Praise the Lord. And then I
Yeah.
bought my first car, took my driver's license the last month of senior year in May. Took me 3 times. I failed 3 times before I got my license because I taught myself how to drive, and
Mhm.
bought my little car. And then I moved into my car and lived in my car for over a year and a half.
Wow. Wow. Such a story of resiliency. Man, I just, it kind of triggered me when you said those trash bags, because I have had an experience like that. I'm just like, man, not the trash bags. Like, out of everything I'm going through, all I can put my stuff in is these trash bags,
It's
you
the
know.
worst, right? It's so demeaning. I remember my mother would take us to places with trash bags, and then those same places that would get fed up with us would bring us back to our mother in our trash bags. And I just remember,
Wow.
you know, and it's the story of so many foster youth, right? Because you're destitute poor. You're
Mhm.
destitute poor. I remember my biological mother, she would go to McDonald's on Wednesdays when it was 10-cent hamburgers, and she would buy 20, 30, 40 hamburgers, and then she would stick them in the freezer, and she would leave for the week, and that's what we would eat. Yeah. Like,
Wait,
like,
wait, wait.
yeah,
Did you say she would stick to McDonald's, the fast food processed
in the
hamburgers?
in the
Into,
freezer. And that's what we would, and that's what we would eat. And my
wow.
sisters and I, because I'm the oldest of I'm the third oldest out of us 8 before the other two,
Mhm.
where there was 10. And so we would babysit neighbors and um, help around the house for other neighbors so we could make money. And then we'd walk across the street to the Winn-Dixie, and we would buy canned tuna and peanut butter and, a loaf of bread so we could feed our siblings, because those hamburgers never lasted long. And yeah, so, when you grow up in that type of destitute poverty and you see your peers, most of your peers living, you know, normal, it
Mhm.
can be hard when you travel around in trash bags. Like, that is the trigger that sets it off, because it's like, man,
Definitely,
and so even
definitely.
now, um, you won't catch me and my things in a trash bag. I don't care, hell or high water. I'm not putting my stuff in a trash bag ever
Mhm.
again.
Definitely. It's crazy. I do a lot of advocacy here in my state and nationally with, different programs and such. And that has been one of the biggest staple things when I'm talking to social workers or, foster parents. I'm like, one thing you do not want to do, because it's the very little things, it is the very, and it's not just a foster care thing, it's a child thing, it's the very little things, when what you do and how you do it, that leave imprints and impressions on a kid. Having to take out the trash as a kid, but nonetheless, when you're getting ready to leave somewhere, you're seeing your things, yourself, in that trash. So where do you place your value at? How do you supposed to look at yourself at a great value as a human being, as a child, as a future woman, a future man, in today's society, when that was your beginning,
Exactly. And I think, for me too, just growing up in the chaotic dysfunction and abuse that I did, those little things, even in different homes, were more painful, because I expected it from, right, my biological family, because it was so toxic and abusive since I was little. But then to go to a different home and have them take care of me and have food for like a few months that was amazing, and seemingly two parents and like, a roof over my head and didn't have to worry about electricity and just like kind of normalcy, to them getting tired and then throwing all my stuff in trash bags. It was like, man, yeah, nobody loves me. Nobody really does love me because I'm worthless enough to just bag up in a trash bag and carry away back to my biological mother. And so you're absolutely right. And I think there's a lot of nonprofits, Together We Rise and handfuls more, that do a lot of the duffel bag ministry. And I think that's so great because the little things like the trash bags and, eating the same foods and being able to do sports activities and just kind of being normal like your peers really mean a lot, and they can change the trajectory of your life when an adult sees that and steps in and says, you are worth it. You do deserve some luggage, and you do deserve permanency, and you do deserve adoption, and you do deserve to be able to play that sport after school. And I'm going to foot the bill on that so you can have those experiences. And I think that's where we get healing and where children can overcome some things, when men and women of integrity and of sound-mindedness can step into that space and help our kids like us.
Definitely. You touched on, previously you touched on that transition, to like really you seemingly, after your senior year and so forth, it really wasn't a smooth transition. It was, a transition into instability, more instability. So if you could touch on that a little bit more, like that high school experience, having going through all of that, and then now to, okay, you out of this, high school experience. Now what's next for myself, living in your car, and, how did that transition period, look for you?
It was really sad because my senior year, I did 4 years of ROTC in high school, and I was convinced I was going to get an ROTC scholarship to become a military officer in one of the academies or a local school within Florida. And I applied to, I don't even know how many ROTC scholarships across the state and the big four. And I got rejected about all of them because I was a C student. So I was an A athlete in cross country, track and field, and ROTC, but I was a C student because I didn't learn to read till I was in high school. So, I struggled in academics and I was terrible at math, and I didn't enjoy reading because it was such a, it was so painful for me because I would be made fun of all the time because I didn't know how to read when I was little. So I didn't like reading, and I liked writing, but obviously I wasn't good at it. Clearly I've overcome that now that I wrote a book, and I'm on my second one, but it took me a really long time. And so I think senior year, when I got rejected from all of those schools, that was my only shot for me. And I knew it. I was like, if I don't get a scholarship to go to college, then I don't know. I don't have backup. I don't have parents. No one adopted me. I didn't get that blessing. And so it was just me either enlisting the military, which at the time I didn't want to do because I had custody of my little sister. So I didn't want to leave her. And it was just, and also I didn't want to enlist. I wanted to be an officer, and I didn't want to give that up because that's always what I wanted to be. And so, yeah, I think it was even more painful because I was dealt a bad hand, but I was a good girl overall, right? I never drank. I didn't do drugs. I didn't sleep around. Like, I knew I didn't get that luxury to do those things, that if I got caught up in that, no one was coming to rescue me. And for whatever reason, I knew that. And so I stayed far, far away from the things that could harm me. And I was really sad when I had to move into my car because I had worked so hard thinking I was going to get a scholarship to school, but none of the schools wanted me because I wasn't smart enough. And so, it was humbling. And I moved into my car with my surfboard and my couple trash bags. And I read my Bible every day. And I just was like, you know what? I know God has more for me, and I'm not gonna quit. I'm not gonna give up. And I didn't know what I was gonna do. And I had found, and I was working at the time at Smoothie King, and I loved Smoothie King because they would always feed me and take me to school my senior year. It was so great. Bless you, Smoothie King. And then I got a second job at Castle Monica Hotel in downtown St. Augustine as a valet girl, which was crazy because I had just gotten my license. So I would, drive these fancy cars, just having my license. Like, these rich people didn't know, like they would never give me their keys if they had known 18-year-old me, fresh license, no idea. But anyways, so I was doing that. And then I got a third job at Village Inn at night for all the drunk people who like pie. So, I was really hustling when I was living in my car, because I didn't want to stay there, and I didn't know what else to do. So I just worked. And I had worked in high school. My first job was at Firehouse Subs. So yeah, I just worked and saved up money, and it got really hard because I never thought about it until I was homeless, but I didn't know where to shower and I didn't know how to wash my clothes. And man, it gets hard real quick when you're living in your car, real quick. And so that experience really shaped me on a soul level, on a foundational level, to always be grateful and to not take things for granted. And I don't need much to be happy. I think that's why the Army likes me, because I can sleep out in the field and be fine. It's a gift to sleep under the stars and know that you can go home and have a shower, so it doesn't bother me. But it took that hardship of and suffering, when I was 18 and 19 and almost 20, to be that time of month as a girl and not have any clean underwear and not know where to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Those are real life experiences that are very humiliating and very hard. And I think that continued to shape me into the warrior that I am, to ensure that our kids in care and our at-risk youth have the same opportunities as their peers, and to show people, hey, no matter where you come from, if you stay the grind and you don't quit, you can really achieve something. Is it going to take you a long time? Sure. I wanted to be an officer in the military at 14 years old, my freshman year of high school. I was rejected and denied my senior year. I went back into the Army to become a cadet, to become an officer in 2016. I am now a United States officer, United States Army. And so did it take, how many years was that? 19 years from the time I wanted to the time it happened? That's a long time to wait for something, but I think it's a testament to show people, hey, it might take you a long time to achieve something, but you'll get there. It's like the ideas when I was living in my car, in my prayer journal, I'd write down, okay, what do I want to do? Because this isn't going to be my forever. And I was like, okay, I want to change the way children are treated. I want to change the way child abuse is treated. I want to change my outcome. I want to write a book and share my story. I want to start a nonprofit. I want to do XYZ. And so I started writing down all these dreams, which were completely preposterous because I was homeless, eating the kids' meal out Chick-fil-A menu, trying different places to park in Jacksonville where I wouldn't get mugged. So it was really silly, to someone looking in, to be like, look at this homeless girl with all of this dream journal, which I still have. And so that's where I started. I started my dream journal and I matched up with scripture and prayer. And I was just determined that God was going to do something in me and through me. And I wasn't going to let my circumstances or other people tell me otherwise. And I just continued on that path. And so in 2006, I started writing Cinder Girl. And then in 2016, 10 years later, HarperCollins, the biggest publishing company in the world, signed me. And then in 2019, I did a book tour with Cinder Girl. So it's like, again, you have to look at that and say, okay, when you look at your circumstances, you're right, you'll never get there. You have to press into the hard spaces. You have to press into what I call walking by faith. I didn't see it when I was homeless, how I would get to be an author and to share my story. I didn't see how I'd be on a national book tour, but I knew if I never quit, I could get there. And then 10 years, 13 years later, it came to fruition. And so, I always encourage people, it's going to take you a long time to accomplish something, but it's worth it. And you can do it. You can put in the hard work and you can fight for the American dream that you are destined for, and you can get there. And it's not going to be easy, but it'll be worth it.
Definitely. Thank you. Like, you dropped a lot of nuggets there, a lot of breadcrumbs, and it's truly a blessing and honor, to hear your story, to hear how you took those breadcrumbs throughout your experience, whether bad or good, and made a loaf of bread for yourself. A couple things that you said that resonated with me: rejection, failure, you know, ultimately those rejections, those failures, those moments of coming close to success and it not really working out push you to press forward into your future and success. Like, um, a lot of us as, alumni, and foster youth, we have a hard time. We have a very hard time with failure, with rejection, and especially because the people who were supposed to give us, that love rejected us, So now though, when rejection comes in life, in society, it feels like the world is rejecting us all over again, and that weighs a lot on, the mental health. But I'm here to say from my experience, this is my little rant that I'm gonna go on. I met Christina after my fourth time applying to the NFI Shadow Day experience. Um, I applied again out of a whim because I was like, I ain't got it 3 years rolling. Like I had applied, I had put my heart on these applications and papers. I networked like, hey, I know you went, what did you do? And nothing happened. But also during that experience, a domino effect had happened to me in my life where I had lost my job and lost my place. And I was staying with some friends that didn't work out and I found myself homeless. So I was in a homeless shelter working 3 jobs. And I was like, I should not even be applying for this, and I got it my fourth time. But long story short, I worked those 3 jobs, as a mascot for my college with this big old bear suit being hot. And then as a clerical assistant and as a student life assistant. But also the other part of that story is I dropped out of college. Because I felt like it wasn't for me. I felt like life was pushing me towards something else. My second go around at college, I told myself, similar to, yourself, I told myself that I need to invest myself in this. If I'm going to do this, if I feel like this is my saving grace, this is what's going to get me to the next step forward, I need to not just go to school, but put myself in the school. Like I need to be in the library. I need to be participating in activities. I need to be, if that's the person is the vice president, and he holding a boring conference, let me go network with him and sit in that boring conference. I don't know what he's going to offer me, but I know that's where I need to be. And I made sure I did certain things like that because I wasn't going to take any more rejection or failure. Ultimately, I knew it was inevitable to happen, but what I set myself up for was the success, and I pressed forward, just like you said, towards my future and so forth. And I appreciate that because that's just an awesome statement because, within my own story, but in many other stories of the population that you specified in the beginning of this, is that population that has aged out, those older you, and so forth. A lot of them resonate with myself. Like I'm 24, there's still streams of stability that I still have to work on, and I was talking to somebody else where I was telling them like, scientifically, the brain doesn't stop developing until age 25. That's in a perfect world. When you have trauma, that is imprinted on your brain and so forth, you're stuck back where that trauma is. So when you're about 18, 19, and you still haven't done a process of healing and working through those things with mental health and so forth, where are you at 24 and 25? If you haven't done that, and it's awesome to have someone, like yourself and other advocates that are advocating for that, that population of people that are aged out and so forth, because so many times we think, oh, well, they're out of the system, that's it. You got it, go be an adult. But that's not the truth. So if you don't mind kind of responding on that advocacy, what does that look like for you? What drives you to advocate for that population of people?
Yeah, well, I would say for one, my own lived experience, right? Because I was part of that aged out group that went into homelessness. And back then in 2005, 2006, 2007, I didn't know of any services. I know we have more for our kids now, right? We've got Foster 21. A lot of colleges are now doing free scholarships. That wasn't a thing for me at my time that I was aware of. And so, I think my lived experience has caused me to continue to fight for our aged out population, because not only do our young adults continue to perpetuate the cycle of poverty and abuse within our communities, they end up in the welfare and the prison system. And then that taxes our local communities, right? Taxes our economy, taxes our families, taxes our relationships. And it's like, well, that doesn't need to be. We can take these resilient, I believe that foster care children are the most resilient humans on the planet. They can endure anything. And if you have a resilient human being who gets the proper support and wraparound support and safe, loving relationships, that child is going to become an adult who gives back to the community, who starts their own business, who chooses healthy relationships and marries a husband or wife that helps them build a new family that stays together, right? And so I look at it as like, okay, if we start giving back to this age group, to this population, this special targeted population, then we can change an entire community and lift a community out of poverty and bring a community into the working middle class, which is the American dream, right? So to me, it is. So, that's why I see the need. It's like, man, not only has this changed the life of the young adult, but it changes the trajectory and the fabric of the community for the better. Now you've got all of these broken children that are healing adults, and they're giving back. They're giving back, right? And so they're mentoring other kids, and they're working full time, and they're choosing healthy relationships that don't perpetuate abuse. And when you start seeing men and women step into that space of healing and become adults who give back, that's when magic and beautiful things happen inside of a small community. And it's at that community level that I think we need to focus on, right? So definitely federal policy. I mean, you and I have both been working on federal policy for many years. I think that's important, but it really is at the community local level where real change happens at the individual level, the family level, which carries over into the community and makes it a healthier, safer, better, more, enjoyable community to live in, which is God's intent. Living in family and living in safe relationship and living in stability is God's intent. And so I just fight for that, because I see, like you said, people just, when they think of foster care, they think of the 7-year-old or they think of the 12-year-old. They don't think of the 16 or 17 or 18 or 19-year-old. And I think that narrative has been better the last few years, where people are starting to focus on the aged out group. Clearly we need to do more work, but I just continue to share my story and fight for the policies that I think are going to continue to support our young adults into healing, so they can, give back and choose healthy and heal their trauma. And I'll say something about trauma. I'm a big advocate for trauma therapy, trauma support, trauma healing, trauma informed care, all the trauma. I've been talking about trauma before it was cool, like 15 years ago. So, and I knew in my own life, because I didn't know how to express my emotions. My nickname in high school was Miss Stone Cold, because I just shut down. I didn't have the ability. I didn't have the emotional, intelligence to share a feeling. I was crippled on the inside. And so for years, I just shut down. If you said something that offended me, or if you said something I didn't like, or if I felt, uncomfortable or whatever, I just clammed up, walked away, didn't say anything. And then I never talked to you again. I could easily cut you out like you never existed, and I think that's a lot of trauma responses for most kids who are abused. All very toxic, all very dysfunctional, all very unhealthy. And so in my young 20s, remember when I told you when I was 10, I was like, I'm not going to be my mother. So I noticed that I had issues with emotional relationships. And I was like, man, I need help. So I reached out on my own and started doing trauma therapy. And I've been in and out of trauma therapy from 20, and I'm 35 now. And I did trauma therapy all through 2020 to continue to work on myself and, heal and grow. And it changes as you get older. The therapy that you need changes, and you use it as a tool to become successful in your marriage or become successful in your career. But all through my 20s, it was deep, deep, painful healing of some hard stuff, right? And if I didn't experience that and I didn't do that hard work, I wouldn't be able to give back emotionally the way that I do. And so I think it's really important that people know that. Yes, it's painful, but it is so necessary to work on your healing journey. And I advocate for mental health and mental health services and policies for our kids and really everybody, because it is such a tool. When you really get to that space where you can heal from something and it doesn't cripple you anymore, and the panic attacks don't cripple you anymore, and the flashbacks don't cripple you anymore, that is such a beautiful space to be when you come from where we come from. And so I'd always, if you're out there and you're listening and you haven't done any healing on and any trauma therapy, oh boy, that could be your breakthrough.
Definitely, definitely. We live in a society where we will put our physical health at the top of the line, but for most of our life, put mental health in the garage somewhere, and not deal with it, you know. And I'm one to tell you guys, like, I started advocating, um, not even thinking about my own mental health. At age 15, I started advocating as that. I didn't know, you know, by opening up my mouth, by speaking, what had happened to me in my experience was starting a process of healing for me. I was doing it without actually being in a setting. But what I want to tell you guys, for the listeners and so forth, is that we can no longer, after all that has happened to us in these 2 years, almost 3 years, with this pandemic, with all that's happening, wars that has been fought and so forth, in this country and outside of this country and so forth, we can no longer prioritize other things instead of prioritizing ourselves. We need to put ourselves on the forefront and deal with the stuff that's happening inside. And then from that, working on that stuff that's happening on the inside, that mental health, you will see how much great things fall from that tree and how many different fruits and so forth, because it takes like one person. Say, for instance, you're the head of your household. You're not dealing with your mental health. What is everybody else following behind in that household? What is the kids following behind? What is your spouse following behind? So we're leading generations of things without knowing. So just, take an opportunity. There's so many different therapies out there. There's so many different practices. There's so many different things to do regarding mental health. I'm not one to kind of tell you guys what to do with it, but one thing I want you to do is start that conversation in your household. If you're single and you got a pet, start the conversation with your cat or dog, something, just open that door, and start to deal with those things, because, as a society, we have to do better. We have to. This is not just a foster care thing. This is not just, people who've been through the criminal justice system. This is not just, I had dysfunctional parents. This is, everybody has somewhere in their life experienced some form of trauma or something that has left an imprint, and I want to, talk about those stigmas and labels, that we place on things about mental health. Well, I can just pray about it, or it's, that's not a part of my culture. I'm a person, I'm a Christian. I go to church every Sunday and I do devotional and I pray, throughout the whole week. There's still things that I have to do with my walk with Christ and so forth. But what I want to say is pray about it, but also go see the therapist. Because if you're not doing doing what you need to do, you're not putting in the work, and so forth. It's a saying, faith without works is dead. You can have the faith, but can you continue on working forward, and doing what you have to do. But I don't know if you have anything to touch on those stigmas and labels and so forth.
No, I think Michael, you're exactly right. I follow the Lord too. Jesus is the only reason I'm here before you. And I think my faith has been the absolute foundation and number one reason why I endured the fight, right? And why I didn't quit, because I knew the promises of God and I was like, not gonna let go. I don't care. Back to walking by faith, when I was homeless and I wrote all my dreams, I was like, I don't care what it looks like. I'm gonna hold on to that. And I think that's, you know, where you and I are, right? In our walks with the Lord. It's like, I don't care what it looks like. I'm with Jesus, and I know he's got plans for me. And so that's where we're going to, that's what it is. And for mental health, I'll let you guys know, back when I started my trauma therapy, serious intentional trauma therapy in my 20s, I started having physical ailments because the trauma inside of me was physically coming out of my body. That is a real thing. And I talk about it in my next book, and I think if you've got a lot of chronic illness and a lot of chronic health issues, it could very well be bottled up trauma and experiences and pain and unforgiveness and bitterness that is trapped inside of you, because we're not just physical beings. We are spiritual beings in a physical body. And so when your mental and emotional health is unwell, you will physically feel unwell. It's just like panic attacks, right? If you feel the spirit of fear, your body physically reacts to that. And so I think it's really important, like what you said, you can talk to the Lord and you can pray about it all day, but if you don't step in faith and get that medicine, that healing through therapy, the Lord can't make you do it. And it's just, I always tell people, I'm like, when you're hungry, do you ask Jesus for tacos? Like, does he, like, no, when you're hungry, you go into the kitchen, you make yourself a sandwich and you feed yourself. It's the same way. Like, you can't just expect the Lord to just drop things out of the sky for you. Now, can he? Sure. He's the living God, the God Almighty. He can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, and however he wants to do it. But in the world that we live in, he gives us free will and he gives us choice, and he's, we're not puppets. So I feel like it's just very sound and biblical truth there that you just gave us. And I totally agree. And it's a foundational principle in my life where, yeah, I'm going to pray and do the work and read the scripture and trust the Lord. And then I'm going to walk it out in faith and let the Lord do the rest. So yeah. And I would continue to encourage everyone listening, because Michael's right. It doesn't matter where you come from. Everyone's got some junk in the trunk that needs to be unraveled. So, best you do it now while you're young. And I always tell people this too. A midlife crisis isn't a midlife crisis. It's unhealed trauma that physically can no longer be trapped inside your body and it comes out. That's what that is. A midlife crisis is all the things that you bottled up for years and years and years and years, and it can no longer hold it anymore. And you have a mental breakdown because it's all physically coming out of you. In God's graciousness, that's how we're wired, so we have to deal with our junk.
Definitely. Thank you for that. Let's have a couple more questions for you. And also just in saying, like, I appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability, being here today, it's definitely well appreciated. It's always nice to be able to do this. Like, I know I've been doing this. I got like 20 episodes out now, but like, it is always just listening to someone's story and their journey. It is kind of rejuvenating for myself, because I'm like, I get that moment where it's like, you really made it out, I'm right there with that person, kind of, listening to their story. And I'm like, throughout all that you've been through, you're still here. You made it out. You've persevered, and you're here to be able to talk and transform. And I think about the people that I'm talking to, and I'm like, despite what they may be going through right now, they're in a place where they're able to talk about these things and transform that narrative for themselves and for the people that are listening. So I just want to thank you for that. Our last couple questions is, you've been doing advocacy, you've done some book tours, you wrote a book, also, still part of like the National Guard and so forth, and all these great things. I'm pretty sure some things I'm leaving out there. COVID happened, it affected us. How did that affect you and your work and in your experience? And if you can also expound on, what did you do to kind of cope throughout that?
So the Army sent me to Texas. I was attached to the 625th Task Force out there in Austin, Texas. And so when I was on my national book tour, right, I was still traveling the country. of February of 20, I was still on my national book tour for Cindergirl. And I had 6 months left of speaking events and interviews. And then all of a sudden, everything got canceled. And I was in lockdown in Austin, Texas, where I had just moved, didn't know anybody, had just moved there, friendless, in my little apartment in downtown Austin with nothing. And I was just like, okay, Lord, well, here we are. And I just got connected with Governor Abbott's team on human trafficking and DPS and Department of Children and Families there, and just started doing my normal work within the community to ensure, our kids were getting the best care during that time. And I was still doing Army. But my career, as far as had taken off doing speaking events and speaking nationally, and, finally the dream, right? I had been speaking publicly since 2006, but I didn't get a speaking agent until I was on the Today Show. And so I had finally got a speaking agent and, bookings all over. And I was like, oh, it's finally happening. And then bam, overnight career smash, no more income. That's how I was, providing for myself. That's how I would, made money, was my speaking events. And I was devastated. It's like, wow, now how am I going to pay for rent? And how am I going to do this? Because the Army it's part-time Army, and it's not a lot of money. You don't do part-time Army for the money. So I was really in a place where I was devastated, confused. And then I was like, well, I'd been through this before with the Lord. I'd been homeless several times in my early 20s, just because that's kind of what happens when you go through the system and you don't get adopted. You just kind of have to go through those moments, and it's normal and it's painful. But I'm living proof you can be homeless multiple times and be okay. So I was like, well, I guess if I'm going to be homeless again, it's really, really don't want that, because I thought I was past that stage, but okay, Lord. So I just started giving back to the Texas community, and while I was out there, and for my mental health, I was outside every day. I was working out every day. I got a puppy because I was lonely, and I wasn't dating anyone at the time. And I started working on my second book and started working on the Cindergirl movie project. And I just stayed busy with work as best as I could, and kept a positive attitude, knowing that God is in control of everything, and I can only do what I can do, and things I cannot control, I will no longer worry about. I'll just do my best with the hand I'm given. And so that's kind of how I coped with it, and just lots of Netflix binging sometimes. It's like in Austin, it was like real lockdown. Like there were some weeks there where you couldn't leave your house. You really would get a fine if you left your house. So I was in my little apartment so that's why I got a puppy, and POTUS is now almost 2. And so I think the pandemic for me changed a lot in my career, right? Squashed all my speaking events, but it opened up my foundation more, the Christina Meredith Foundation, so I could do more work. And it grew me as a person. I walked with the Lord closer, and I spent more time outside, and, I wasn't codependent. I think a lot of people who come from where we come from end up being codependent in toxic relationships. And I praise the Lord, so many years of trauma therapy, I really was healed of that. I was totally okay, content, a deep contentness, being alone and just serving in my community the way that I could, and made a couple friends here and there. And that's how I got through. I'm not going to say it was easy, because certainly it wasn't, right? We're built for relationships. So it was very emotionally taxing, but it wasn't devastating. I wasn't locked up in my apartment crying every day. We had work to do. I'm not a big crier anyways. Don't get me wrong, I cry, but I'm more of there's just too many people hurting for me to be I don't wallow in self-pity. One of my tags is death to self-pity. I'm not going to wallow in my own, pity. That's just I'm not a victim, and right. I'm never going to walk in that. So yeah, that's how I got through 2020.
Thank you.
And then after that period of, isolation and seemingly loneliness through the work, even though I was working the foundation side, I met my husband, and I moved back to Florida. The Army moved me back to Florida. And then the Army had me in Georgia all last year. And now I'm back in Florida with my husband, and my puppy's no longer a puppy. He's 2. So it's like, you know, the Lord
That's
worked it out.
awesome. That's awesome. You know, it's just, you never know. You never know what certain circumstances lead to,
Yeah.
and I ask that question because I think it's important, let me backtrack. I think it's overall important that we have dialogues and dialogues upon crisis and after crisis. I'm a firm person that believes, because I do a lot of work in advocacy and I'm talking and dealing with trauma and revisiting my own trauma on the daily, so
Which
I'm
is
a person
so
that
fair.
believes, you're right. I'm a person that believes we need to debrief from things. And although COVID isn't really done, it's still happening. We're in a space where we can debrief and we can hear those stories of triumph and victory from it, and to help us persevere towards the future and so forth. So I ask that question a lot, and I get very different, explanations and answers to it. And I haven't got one that was, man, I struggle. Like, I don't know. I get, it sucked, but like this
Yeah.
is what I did. I made the best with the apples and so forth. And that resiliency they tapped into that resiliency, and they're like, look, I just got back to work, kind of just like what you said. And that's awesome. Um, my last couple of things are, what tips and tidbits do you have for foster care youth and alumni that are aging out, or adults right now that are not really dealing with their mental health and so forth? Like, what advice could you give to those people?
I would say the first thing that you should do is write down your dreams and your goals that you want to achieve, because you can achieve those things. It might be hard and you might not see it in your current circumstance, but you can do whatever it is that you achieve. Truly, in this great nation, we have that gift. It is a fact, and I'm living proof of that. You just have to work really hard and take rejection when it comes, because it's going to come, and become a expert in failure, like I am. I am an expert in failure. I tell people that all the time. And that's how I've become successful, because I became an expert in failure. And so write down all your dreams. And then when you look at your dreams, write down your relational goals, right? Because you cannot get to those dreams without your healthy relational goals. And then once you write down your relational goals, do an assessment of yourself. Self-assessment is a huge, huge gift. Just be honest with yourself. Are you hurting? Are you depressed? Are you anxious? Are you a bitter person? Are you a pessimist? Like, are you happy? Are you joyful? Are you glasses always half full? Write down who you are, and then the things that need to be improved, work on them. Be intentional. Get into therapy. Get into, group therapy. Do whatever it is that you have to do to work on those things, so you don't perpetuate the cycle of poverty and abuse, because you will never get to the dreams and the relational goals until you become a broken person who's healed, right? And so I always tell people, I was a broken person, but now I'm whole, right? You can be whole after being shattered. It's just true. Does it take time? Does it take intention? Does it take effort? Yes. But you can do it. And so that's what I would say is, don't ever quit on yourself. You are your biggest gift. God formed you in your mother's womb and brought you here for a reason. I don't care what you were told. You have a specific destiny for your life. You cannot give up on you. Somebody is dependent upon you achieving your destiny. Lives hang in the balance depending on whether you step into the space where you're doing what you're called to do. And I just think it's, we're not victims, we're warriors. And we just war through. We war through the pain. We war and we fight for ourselves so we can fight for others. And I think that's what I would say to aging out youth, and youth still in that transition period where it's very hard, very lonely, financially stressful. You can you can get out of it. You can get to the place where you dream to be. You really can. You really can. So fight for yourself because you're worth it. That's what I would say.
Thank you for that. So powerful, and meaningful. I hope you guys that are listening to this, whenever you guys are listening to this, that you take heed of those words. You know, I like to say, when I'm speaking to alumni and so forth, this is like, that analogy when you have an elder, so many years and so much wisdom and so much experience, because Foster, you have been through so much things in a short stint of time. And so I was speaking to another person named Cedric Riley, and he was telling me that he's lived several different lifetimes within his lifetime because of his experience and so forth. I think for the listeners, you can't discount that. This is experience that you don't even have to go through, that you can just witness. Like, I don't need to go through it. She went through it for me. I'm gonna just take her advice. I'm gonna take her wisdom, and I'm gonna apply it to see where I can get to and so forth. That's the kind of person that I am. If I can avoid going through some struggle, avoid going through some heartache, and I can learn from someone else's experience, whatever advice or wisdom, I like to take it in. So I applaud you guys to take that in. My last and final question is, what is next for you on this journey?
The next thing for me, it's so funny you asked that because today I announced my candidacy to run for office here in Florida. And so, so that's next in 2022 here in November. And my next book, Assuming Risk in a Risk Averse World, will be out in 2023. And just continuing to fight, for sound policy and advocacy for all the things that I've been worrying for the last 15 years. So that's what's on the home front. And also, John, my husband, I'm 6 months pregnant, so we're gonna have a little girl here soon, and that in itself is so healing. I'll tell you, because I don't have a mom or a dad, and I haven't seen my mother since I was 16, and it's always painful, the big events. It's so weddings and getting pregnant and going to be a mother here soon. I thought it would be crippling and sad and depressing, right? Because you always wish that you had your mom and dad there for you for those big moments. And I'll tell you, having a husband who loves the Lord, who loves me, and choosing a spouse who is healthy and whole, gosh, I can't wait to be a mom. And there's no hardship, there's no sadness. It is just all joy because John and I broke the cycle of poverty and abuse. And now I get to bring this little girl into the world, and she's going to have the love and the care and the stability that she deserves and what the Lord created her for. So, that's exciting. I'm excited to be a mommy. And yeah, I also say one more thing to what you said before. What else I would tell people is put to death self-pity. Tell yourself you were not a victim. Because if you wallow in that victim mentality, you will stunt your growth and you will forever stay in the pit of despair, and you will never grow and you will never be successful. So you got to fight against that. You really do in your mind have to fight against the self-pity and the woe is me and, my mother did this to me, or my family did this to me, or my daddy did this to me, or this person did this to me. And I know how hard that is because I had to fight against it too, to get to this place where I am today, where I'm like, I am not a victim. Nobody owes me anything. It is me that owes the world, and I owe it the fight to do what's right and to fight for others and to war for what's good. And that has to be your mentality. Just you got to shift it, and then your world will open up and you'll be so much happier. You really will. Take ownership, take responsibility, because you can do it and you're worth it.
Wow. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I'm just excited to see this journey that you're on. I I am a fan. I'm honored to be able to speak with you. Um, and it's been great doing this because I've been able to bring people on this show who have not impacted, because I can't speak today, impacted my adult life, and so forth, and you are one of the people who impacted my adult life. You know, I met you in a place of struggle. I met you in a place of self-pity. And just listening to your story, when I got back home, it kind of turned on the grind mode. I was already working and, um, moving in faith and so forth like that. But I'm pretty sure you know as well as I know, we can go to church, we can go through the motions and stuff like that. But until we switch that switch in our mind, like I really need to do something. I really need to enact. We could just be floating, And I was in a place of floating. I really wasn't pushing myself to, take on great opportunities and so forth. Hence, like I really wasn't going to take on the NFII Shadow Day again. I wasn't going to do it, and something pushed me to do that. So
The Lord.
I just want to thank you. Right. I want to thank you for being a role model, a virtual role model for my life, and being able to take some of the experience and reading your book and watching you do so many great things and be like, if she can do it, I can do it too. And I just thank you for that. And I'm pretty sure some of the listeners, alumni and so forth that are listening to this is doing the same thing because, we look at people, of your stature and that have made it through, and we be like, one day I'm going to be just like her, because we don't have those parents. We don't have those parents. So we look to our brothers and sisters who have been in the foster care system, who have made it, to be like, that's who I'm going to look up to. That's where I'm going to try to get to. So thank you for being that person for those youth and myself. And lastly, I say this every time, as I'm ending out, COVID is real. It is out here. It is here. It ain't going nowhere. There's a different variant almost every week. I'm exaggerating, but it is like a different variant sometimes like that. But what I want to say is not to get political or anything like that. If you're thinking about getting vaccinated or already vaccinated or whatever the situation may be, do your research, do your homework, get vaccinated. Just go do it. If you're not getting vaccinated, it's not your thing. That's your choice, whatever. But please wear your mask. Please wash your hands. Use sanitizer. Take care of yourself. Because when you're taking care of yourself, whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated, you still should be wearing masks in places too. Just put that out there. That does not make you safe. Not having vaccinated and so forth. But just taking care of yourself helps take care of the village that you live within and essentially take care of the community. On a serious thought, we got to take care of each other. If you see someone hurting, reach out. If you see someone going through some things, reach out. And I just want you guys to know, coming out of this, whether it be mental health, whether it be health issues, whether it just be you need somebody to be there and so forth, reach out. There's resources, there's connections, heck, my social media is out there. I'm telling y'all, reach out and so forth. I might be groggy, need some coffee, if you call me and you're in a different time zone, but I promise you I would get back to you guys. Because it takes us all working with each other to do this thing called life. There's no roadmap, there's no guide, and so forth. And we're all just kind of stumbling along, so please be safe out there. This is Resilient Voices and Beyond. And thank you guys for listening. Lastly, have a good night, have a good evening, have a good morning after listening to this. Just let it be good.